Aloha, namaste. This is Radha, and I'm here to talk about our full moon that's happening. And it's really Wednesday night into Thursday morning is the phase of this full moon. Here in Hawaii, it will be 1:26 a.m. when the actual moon and sun are across from each other, Thursday morning. Pacific time, it'll be 4:26 a.m. But again, the moon phase, like a titi or a phase of the moon, begins and ends on the actual new moon or full moon. So that's when the time that the moon and sun are exactly across from each other is when the phase is ending. So the duration is the night before. And this particular full moon, why I'm bringing this up, is called Sharad Purnima or Kojagiri Purnima. Purnima is the phase itself, the full moon phase. And the Sharad is referring to the season. So this is the like autumn harvest moon. And Kojagiri Purnima is referring to the fact that this is a night that devotees worship the goddess Lakshmi. They stay up all night and fast and leave offerings for her. And it's said to be a night when she flies over their homes, blessing them. When she sees their lights on, their candles on, she blesses them. So we have our moon also moving into Aries from Pisces, like in the very early degrees, right when the moon and sun are across from each other. So the majority of this phase, this moon phase, the moon is going to be in Pisces, and there's going to be a lot of energy from the North Node, even though this isn't an actual eclipse or even a partial eclipse. The North Node is really affecting the moon, and this is causing us to have a lot of wavy emotions. The North Node has this air energy blowing Rahu. It creates a lot of illusion and delusion and almost obsession. And the moon passing through his um, space that he's holding in the sky is really going to create this feeling of like signs and symbols that we're receiving and things we think we know, and this kind of illusory quality where we see things in one way, but it's not exactly how they might be. So this is going to be affecting our mind the whole time before we lead into this very early hours of the morning of the actual full moon, where we'll be then crossing the Gandanta point into Aries in the star of Ashwini. And this is one of those difficult places in the sky where we move from water to fire. And we come from this sort of, you know, freeing ourself vibration of kind of trying to merge with everything in Pisces into this wake up call of like, okay, I got to go somewhere. I've got to do something. And it can be very jolting and jarring. There's nothing to carry us from one sign to the next in these places. And so the recognition of what landed us where we are is lost a little. We have to kind of reacquaint ourselves with what we're doing and why we're there. And this particularly in this case, like I said, because Rahu's involved, there's going to be even more of this dreamlike quality, and the jolt awake into the actual moment of the full moon is going to be disconcerting at first. As the moon moves further into the sign of Aries, and later in the day on Thursday and into Friday, we'll see ourselves sort of take more hold of where we're going and what we're doing. But Ashwini is the sign of the twin horsemen, and it has this very much a directional sense where we have somewhere we want to go, and we really have a lot of capacity to focus on something with this sign. The sun itself is exalted here, but of course, he's not here. The moon is here for the full moon. The sun is across the way in Libra, where he's debilitated. And he's not quite in the degrees of his debilitation, but he's in the early placement. Also, those first degrees of Libra, having just moved from Virgo. But on that end, there's a star that bridges them, and it's called Chitra. And this is a star of illusion. It's ruled by the masters of illusion, the magicians, the architects of all that is, either the deity for the asuras and for the places where we create illusion to avoid reality, which is Maya, or where we're trying to create something that's going to build more connection to source and bring us higher to the truth, which is with Vishwakarma. They're two sides of the same energy. And so we have this capacity to kind of really dive into the illusion and really dive into the magic of creation and what our imagination can bring to life. And at the same time, recognize the places that we're a little lost or where there's kind of holes in our plan or we don't really know what we're doing. And particularly with the sun in Libra, where we're overcompensating for something. We're trying to people please or make everything harmonious so there's no conflict. And as a result, we're making agreements we're not 100% on board with, or we're coming from a leadership place that isn't totally aligned with what we really believe. We'll see this, on bigger global scales and social scales within different communities and countries and things like that. But we'll also see it within our own little power dynamics that we have, where people kind of fold on their power to people please, but then they're not necessarily totally stoked about that. And since this full moon is happening before we've had the tenure of the sun in the sign of Libra, we're really like establishing the dominance on the front end with the moon in Aries, like, this is what I want to do. And then as the month moves on, we'll move more into that vacillation, particularly as the sun moves into the star of Swati. We'll start to really get, like feel like we're being pulled in all these directions. And again, maybe what we built from the beginning wasn't totally bringing us towards the highest truth. Maybe some of it was wanting so much to make friends or to be accepted or to create peace where we thought there might be a little bit of conflict. So this is something to kind of look at. I'm going to share my screen so that we can see the actual chart that we're looking at and what we have running here. We have our moon here, and it's literally barely in Ashwini. Oh, I wonder what happened to my screen there. I was trying to share it so that we could have the we could have, okay, well, we'll try it like this, I guess. I just wanted to be side by side. There we go. I just want to be next to it, so I'm not so small, but we'll see what happens. I try every time, and maybe this time it'll work. We have our sun and moon really barely here, right? They're not even a full degree in. The Gadanta point is the last degree of Pisces into the first degree of Aries, and you can see we're not even a full degree in. So this is a very new energy on both counts. It's not really the apex of the cycle because the cycle hasn't even begun yet. It's like the beginning point of the cycle is to show already how we might be overcompensating, and then we move into it. Now, of course, the ruler of the sun and Mercury's here also, which, can add a lot of diplomacy, and it can add a lot of, a desire to communicate in effective ways that do bring harmony. But it can also contribute to that part where we're making agreements that aren't really necessarily fully aligned for us, but we're just wanting so badly to have that connection. But Venus is really an interesting addition here, that the ruler of the sun and Mercury is in Scorpio, because here we have a tendency to want to control people in our relationships. We have a tendency to be coming from a place of fear. Fear we'll lose somebody. Fear they'll sting first, so we sting first. And really all of our shadows and traumas and dramas and things that we don't really want to face, that are the challenges that come out in our world, but are kind of stuck in the corners and aren't necessarily sitting on the table for us to see. This is the kind of ways which we operate when Venus is in Scorpio. There can be a lot of suspicion. There can be a lot of kind of maybe not full truths being told, or we're not trusting the other person telling the truth, but we're kind of withholding some truth, or there's this dynamic of untrust. And it comes from fear, right? That our lack of trust in life comes from a fearful place. Now, in the star of Anuradha, we have a lot of devotion. This is after Radha, and we have this capacity to really devote ourselves to something higher and have more faith that, like, the divine has got us, even if this other person is doing the thing we're worried about, or even if, our biggest fear does come true, we're still held, and in the end it's all going to work out, even if it doesn't feel that way in the moment. So this can be a blessing as we're in Anuradha. And this, also brings up the other story of this, or one of the other stories of this Sharad Purnima, is this is the night of the divine Leela of Krishna and Radha, and they're in the forest dancing, and it's like pure ecstasy, right? The sound of Krishna's flute gets all these gopis just dancing wildly in ecstatic bliss. And Shiva hears this noise and he's like on his mountain, like, what is going on down there? They're having way more fun than I'm having meditating up here. So he comes down to see what's happening and he gets to the entrance in the forest and the goddess Lalita is there watching and he says, well, I want to come in. That looks fun. I take a little night off from meditating and party with you guys in the woods. And she's like, actually, you can't come in unless you're a woman. And he's like, what? Well, what am I supposed to do about that? So he finds some, female clothes and comes back and she's like, yeah, no, that's not really going to do it. So she tells him to go dip into the Yamuna River and he goes in and the goddess of the river helps him transform into the full form and beauty and effulgence of a gopi. And so he comes out, and the gopis are the milkmaids, right? That are all infatuated with Krishna. And so he comes out and he goes to the gate, and Lalita lets him in. And he goes into the dance and he's dancing just as ecstatically as anyone else. But Krishna can tell, he can sense that there's something different about this particular gopi. So he goes over to him and he takes his hands and he says, oh, welcome to the circle. And he kind of winks and says, Maharaj Gopeshwar, calling him out on the fact that he's Shiva. He's like, I know who you are. You're not really one of the gopis. And then he lets him stay, but he can't really dance in the ecstatic dance with all the gopis because Krishna can really be the only masculine presence there. And so he brings him to the outskirts where Lalita was holding the gate, and he becomes the gatekeeper of the Rasa Leela. And this is a really powerful symbolism because, a lot of times we kind of want to dive into the ecstasy of a situation, or in life, we want to just kind of, directly go to the divine bliss. We're not really that excited about the hard work and tapasya and discipline that's required to get to the true heights. We can certainly experience like stints of bliss and ecstasy. We can go to a kirtan, or we can have some kind of dancing experience on our own, or we can have bliss in many other ways, making love, or having a beautiful day in nature, or whatever brings you bliss. Everybody has different ways in which they seek and find happiness, but usually it's fleeting, right? We leave, maybe we have a powerful feeling for a certain amount of time, but it's often fleeting. And so Shiva's presence at the gate really shows how to get into the complete and total ecstasy and bliss. There is some work required. There is some discipline required. There's a non-attachment required, actually, a non-attachment to the bliss itself, as well as whatever we think gives us that. And can we find that kind of bliss in the midst of, our deepest struggles and challenges? And so this is one of the stories around this particular full moon and finding our delight. And finally, the last thing I'm just going to mention here is just that our moon is going to be in the star of Bharani on the next day. So let's just go like this. And Bharani really has to do with like the consequences of what we create in our actions, and particular actions in connection with someone else. Bharani is also ruled by Venus. And Saturn is giving his one-way drishti here. So we're wanting to create and make people happy, and yet at the same time, and at this point, we'll have the moon and Mercury right across from each other, right? So we're really wanting to like make those agreements and make those connections. Yet at the same time, Saturn's reminding us of our limitations, and Yama, the ruler of Bharani, is reminding us of our limitations, and that there's, sometimes the consequence is death, or sometimes the consequence is almost worse than death. And so we have to be really aware of the ways in which we seek pleasure in those momentary or immediate ways that aren't going to long-term give us what we want. And then Mars is also going to move here on the 20th. And so he's going to move into Cancer, which is his sign of debility. And so we're going to have both the sun and Mars, our two like fiery masculine planets, in their debilitated signs. And Mars is debilitated in Cancer because we don't have discipline. We don't have courage here. Here, we just want to connect. We just want to pour unconditional love and receive unconditional love. And Mars is about, individuation, courage, discipline, action. So a lot of times our anger becomes like passive aggressive here. And we have a hard time really being present with the things we need to do to strengthen ourselves, and also the ways in which to properly express when we're feeling something like irritation or anger, because we don't want to lose that connection so bad. So in both cases, we're really seeking connection, albeit in slightly different ways. Libra's got this more conditional, I want harmony, I want peace kind of thing, and Cancer is just like, please love me. So this is going to be challenging. And then Jupiter, our other masculine planet, is retrograde. So on this particular day, the moon is luckily exalted and here bringing us some grounding and some peace. But as the days go, the moon moves quickly and Jupiter is retrograde along with these two debilitated planets. We're going to see, especially over the month that the sun is debilitated, a lot of our power really diffused in this effort to, have friends and love and feel connected and not make people upset and all this kind of thing. So really tuning into ourselves and our own practices and the things that we know how to do for ourselves already. These are the times to use them, right? This is you've cultivated the discipline at other times, hopefully, so that you can still continue to show up for yourself, still show up on your yoga mat, still say your mantras or your meditation at the altar. Like, continue to do the things that make you feel good and connected, because it's going to be harder, and it's not just you, right? And these alignments that we're sharing, everyone's experiencing it. So you might have really, such solid power in your own chart, perhaps. Maybe your sun and Mars are so powerful that it's not a huge issue for you, but it is, in the sense that everyone else is operating from this place around you. And also, it's different for each sign. So Mars going into Cancer is different for each of us. All of our rising signs, Mars rules something different, and it's in a different place in your chart. For some people, it's actually a little bit of a blessing. It can bring a really powerful Raja Yoga, bringing structure and Dharma together, even though it's debilitated. It'll still be debilitated. We'll still see the ways in which it doesn't show up in the highest intelligence, but it might manifest things that are beneficial for that person. Whereas for other people, it can be bringing a structural or dharmic planet into a difficult house, and this can cause a lot more disruption in their life. And this can still be a blessing, but it's going to be a harder learned blessing. And so I do a breakdown every week for all the forecasts of the week, all the different alignments that we experience with the moon and the different transits. And this week's personal weekly forecast has the sun in Libra, Mars in Cancer, and this full moon. So if you want to know how these things affect you personally, you can go to my Patreon group at patreon.com, Radha Home Astrology, sign up for Cosmically Aligned. It's very affordable at $7.77, and you get that personal weekly forecast for this week and also for next week and the week after that. And I'm doing a live discussion next Wednesday on how this Mars particularly affects all of the different signs, because Mars is going to be in Cancer for a long time. And then he's going to go into Gemini when he's retrograde and then move back into Cancer. So we're really looking at an alignment with these two until June of next year. So if you want to get in on that live discussion, you can join Cosmically Aligned also. I also offer you to just purchase the one time of the report for each of the signs. So hope to see you soon. Blessings on your Sharad Purnima.